Welcome back, guys. My name is Matthew Jose. Today I'm going to be talking to you about phase 2 reactions. So, as you can see, if you check out my previous videos, I've gone into a very considerable amount of detail on what phase 1 reactions are and a bit about drug administration as well. So, this is the third lecture in the series of pharmacology that I'm doing. So, phase 2 reaction contains various reactions like glucuronidation, can never spell it properly anyway, sulphation, amino acid conjugation, acetylation, methylation, glutathione conjugation, and epoxide hydrolysis. So, don't be scared because even I was like a bit boom-bassed the first time I saw the amount of reactions there is, but we'll focus into each one. So the main idea is that you need to know about the enzyme. So glucuronidation takes place with gluconosyltransferase. Sulfonation is sulfotransferase, N-acetyltransferase. So what you must have noticed, the clever bunch of you lot, is that they're all transferases, right? So they're all transferases, and these are the functional groups that they can have effects on. Now, let's go into detail on glucuronidation. Right. So, glucuronidation is the major metabolic pathway in all vertebrates. It makes use of the enzyme UGT, which is what I just said before, UDP, glucuronidase, but for shorthand form we call it UGT, and it's found in many other tissues apart from the liver. So it mainly occurs in the liver, but it can be found in intestine, kidneys, adrenal glands, spleen, and thymus. Right, one thing with phase 2, which I forgot to mention at the start, is phase 1 usually included an oxidative reaction. So the whole purpose of it was to functionalize and make the molecule ready for phase 2 metabolism. Right, now phase 2 is a process called conjugation. So usually catalyzed by a transferase enzyme that transfers a polar group, right? Remember, before the drugs are metabolized, they're non-polar. So the whole point of this is to make it polar from a donor or a conjugating agent. So they get it from a donor. So in this case, here's the donor. So as you can see, the transferase enzyme catalyzes the reaction and takes away the green squarey bit, and then it adds it onto the metabolite. So now the molecule is polar. So phase 2 metabolites are generally more polar and can be excreted more easily. So the phase 2 metabolite can also, for example, if this first reaction, if we were to look at glucuronidation, this molecule, this product will be known as a glucuronide. Okay, so exceptions are acetylation and methylation, in which polar groups such as OH and NH2 are masked. So the whole point of this is, from here on the bottom you can see that the excretion is much more increased. Now, if we go down, so this molecule here, UDPGA, this is the donor molecule and is thought to be involved in the process of glycogen synthesis. Glucose 1-phosphate goes there, and then UDP glucodehydrogenase usually forms it. So it's a good background knowledge for you to have of how UDPGA is formed, but in general we should know that it's formed from a glycogen synthesis pathway. So, yep. Now, UGT is the enzyme for glucuronidation. Sorry about my language, but I just cannot pronounce it for some odd reasons. Yeah, so it's located in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum of the liver. The enzyme transfers a glucuronide group from a UDP, so this is a donor rich and abundant, to the nucleophilic O NRS. Now, if I was to make this a bit smaller, sorry, because I know you can't see very well. Yeah, so glucuronides are water soluble and excreted more easily. These metabolites, so once the donor is added to the actual drug, it can then be hydrolyzed again by beta glucuronidase in the gut, and then and then the whole process again goes by where it's metabolized again. So this is known as intrahepatic recirculation. So enterohepatic means it goes back into the liver. It's important in clearance, and most glucuronides are pharmacologically inactive all through. There are some exceptions are morphine, 6-glucuronides. So we'll look at that in a bit. Now, UGT enzymes, they have different classes. So below here, they have the main 3 classes are UGT 1, 2, and 3. But it's mainly 1 and 2 that we're more keen and interested about. So I have this subfamily. So you have UGT2 here, you have UGT1, and then another one here. But each of them can be known as 1A1, 1A4, 2B7, and each of them are different types or different forms of the UGT enzyme, and they carry out different reactions of different molecules, but they all carry out glucuronidation. So UGT2B7 is found in the active liver. It's also been reported that it's found in the brain as well. So an example of this is morphine, right? It could be glucurinated. So here, this is the morphine molecule. So this is the actual molecule, and this is the added extra bit, right? 2B7 can either form a 3-glucuronide, which is inactive, or a 6-glucuronide, which is active. So the enhanced analgesic. Right, morphine is active itself, and then it gets converted by phase 2 to make it more polar, but then this one is still active, whereas this one is not because of the active site is not present anymore, or some sort of change. Now, UGT1A1, so one key thing is 2B7 is involved with morphine, right? Now, 1A1 is the different one, and this one's thought to be involved with, paracetamol, so conversion of paracetamol, Irinotecan, which is used in colorectal cancer, simvastatin, so that's a statin, so it's a cholesterol lowering drug. These are all thought to be involved with the enzyme UGT1A1, right? And yep, so if we move on. Okay, there's an example of glucuronidation. So what happens? So it's mainly alcohols and phenols. So alcohols and phenols are a functional group, and carboxylic acids are also one. So you can see here that so example of this is an alcohol, or it can be a phenol. The R group has to be a benzene if it was to be a phenol. And here's the UDP GA molecule. So this is the donor, and there's the enzyme. So if you remember the donor back again, the donor was something that was made here. So UDP glucuronic acid. So this is the donor formed in the glycogen synthase. So if you go back, as you can see, this is the functional part that we're going to remove. So what happens here is that you lose, if you look over here, the UDP is removed, so and the glucuronic acid part, so the acids come from the carboxylic acid there, is then added on to the O, and then a H is lost. So this is ether glucuronide because of the ether molecules there, as you can see. Now another form is carboxylic acid, which is here, and again this is the UDP glucuronic acid. There's the carboxylic acid. So what happens now is you lose an H, and you lose the UDP, and it binds to here to form ester glucuronide again. But notice the difference. This is ether. That's because there isn't. But this is ester due to the fact that there is a carbon double bond O right there. So this is an ester. So ester is formed from carboxylic acid and alcohol. But in this case, it's ether. So you need to know that the product of alcohol and phenol is ether, whereas carboxylic acid is ester. Now, So another example would be salicylic acid. So here you have both alcohol and a phenol, right? And now notice the difference. So if you were to convert the alcohol first, so what happens is UDPGA is a donor, and you're using UG2B7 this time, right? So if you go back, so in salicylic acid, so active metabolite of aspirin in topical acne treatment. So this is an analgesic. So this is salicylic acid. So UG2B7 converts, there's the enzyme used, and it converts it into an, as you can see, this is an ester. But whereas here, the carboxylic acid is being replaced by the UDP, G-glucuronic acid, and here is forming ester, ether here, and an ester here. Now the next type is N-glucuronidation. So similar to the O, so it's the NH2, and you've got the UDPGA right there. So what happens is you lose an H, and then you form this. Sulfonamide is usually an antibacterial used way back a long time ago. It's not present anymore, but it was used for treating yeast infections. So in World War II, people who lived in trenches, all the soldiers and stuff. Now, here you can see that the SO2, the NH2 here, and the NH2 here. So that's the key molecule that we're looking for. And you lose a H, and you form the glucuronide, and yeah. So it's a UGT enzyme here as well, not to forget. Okay, what effect can reduced glucuronidation have on patients receiving drugs? Right, now Irinotecan is used in colorectal cancer, and this is catalyzed by UG2 1A1. So if you remember, we go back here. 1A1 is paracetamol, simvastatin, irinotecan. So this is used to convert. So if you remember back, or if you haven't watched my previous video, please do. Irinotecan is a colorectal cancer anti-inflammatory drug. It's the process of first in phase 1 is being hydrolyzed to the active form SN38 by carboxylesterase 1 and H2O. This usually takes place in the cytosol of the cell. Now, carboxylesterase 1 is formed from in the liver. It's more in the hepatic sites. So this is the active form of the drug, and then it can be deactivated into the inactive form once it becomes a glucuronide side is added to it. So what's the point in, you might be thinking, well, we need the active form of the drug, why do we need the inactive form? Well, the one key principle that you need to understand is phase 1 and then phase 2, right? Sometimes these drugs don't have to go through both phases, right? It's not necessary that the phase 1 product has to go through phase 2 and then go back into the hepatic circulation and then back into the systemic circulation. Well, no, that's not the case. Phase 2 can happen as well, but the main reason why, if we don't have it, is because then we have a very high increased plasma concentration of the active SN38 form of the irinotecan, which means that there's a high chance of toxicity, severe diarrhea, neutropenia. So this is like a loss of white blood cells, neutrophils. So it's also good sometimes in a way to have glucuronidation taking place, so it can, regulate and control the amount of drug that's present in the plasma and be excreted as well. Now, so that was the first process, first type of reaction. Sulphation is the next one, and this usually occurs for all alcohols and amines and thiols, and they compete because they happen for alcohols, amines, and thiols. This is basically the same has glucuronidation, because that takes place with phenols, alcohols, amines, carboxylic acids. So they're in a direct competition of which one the drug has to undergo. Now, the enzyme here is sulfotransferase, and the energy-rich donor is PAPS, PAPS, or 3-phosphoadenosine 5-phosphosulfate, if you can remember that. Or I just simply remember it as PAPS or PAPAS. So, if you go down, sulphation and glucuronidation are competing pathways for some substrates. Example, paracetamol. Paracetamol has the benzene and it has the OH on the bottom, so it's like a phenol, isn't it? So it can compete for paracetamol. Sulphation predominates at low substrate concentration, whereas at a high concentration glucuronidation takes place. The PAPS is less in the cytosol compared to UDPGA. So UDPGA is much more readily available because this is most cells, especially in glycogen, is stored in the liver. So most cells in the liver abundantly have the UDPGA, whereas PAPS is much more less. Now, 3-phosphoadenosine 5-phosphosulfate, necessary for sulphation reaction, donates a sulfate group to the substrate. So this is the molecule, this is a donor, and what we're interested in is just this part here, so the S double bond O and then the OH. So 3-phosphoadenosine 5-phosphosulfate, so necessary for sulphation, it's meant to be sulphation to occur, and donates a sulfate group to substrate. So paracetamol is commonly used. So in this case, you can see that we have the OH phenol right here. It can either undergo glucuronidation. If you think back, you can undergo it by UGT 1A1. But in this case, we're looking at sulphation, so it takes place via sulfotransferase and then the donor PAPS. So in PAPS, we were interested in just that bit there, and it's added to the nucleophile O here. So nucleophilic O gains the paracetamol sulfate. So that's an example of sulphation. Now, amino acid conjugation is also very important in a sense that carboxylic acids are mainly targeted. Conjugation with glycine. So there's three main types of amino acids that can usually be added: glycine, taurine, and glutamine. You don't need any donor molecules because you're simply adding these amino acids that's already present. But you need an enzyme, N-acetyltransferase, and this whole process usually occurs in the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is also involved. So you can see that so what we're looking at is a carboxylic acid here. So first what happens is, what we're interested in this bit here, but I'll take you through the steps of what exactly happens. Is that first you have carboxylic acid. It undergoes a process by which ATP is added and then an AMP is replaced the OH. Then coenzyme A synthetase adds the CoA part to it removes the AMP and adds the CoA part, which is the acyl-CoA thioester intermediate. So your whole aim is to get to here first before you can get to the amino acid conjugation part. The amino acid conjugation pathway is the whole thing. So first is ATP, and then you get to the coenzyme A synthetase, so that converts it into acyl-CoA thioester intermediate. And then from there, you come into our process where glycine or whatever, so if you go back, glutamine or taurine glycine, glutamine, or taurine, one of these is added in the presence of N-acetyltransferase. So this is what we are interested in, and this is what you possibly want to know. So in this process, you remove the S and the CoA thioester part, and you just add the glycine. So this is how it works. So another example of this would be benzoic acid. So you can start here. What happens is you've got the benzene. So if you follow back, first you do add an ATP that's represented here, and then in this diagram they haven't shown the full one by one step. So what happens is you add ATP, this removes the OH and forms AMP here. Then the AMP is removed and the coenzyme A synthetase adds the S and CoA, so the CoA thioester intermediate over here, and then from here you have the N-acetyltransferase and the you got the glycine molecule, which then forms a complete new molecule. So from there to there. So if you start off here, and as you move along, you got ATP through here and into the benzoyl CoA and into the pyruvic acid. So the main thing, if you'll go back a slide, what you want to know is ATP first into AMP, then coenzyme A synthetase converts it into co-thioester intermediate. CoA thioester intermediate, which then from then N-acetyltransferase forms this. So an example is salicylic acid. So if you remember, salicylic acid can undergo various different types of reactions. So initially, if you look back on my first video, it can undergo phase 1 metabolism. So in this process, the salicylic acid is acted on by CoA synthetase. So we've skipped out the ATP part here. So that takes place as well. So you want to concentrate on the carboxylic acid part. So that then forms the S-CoA thioester intermediate. From there you've got the N-acetyltransferase and the glycine, which is not, the glycine is shown here, but the N-acetyltransferase enzyme is not shown here, in order to form salicylic acid. Right, there's another form of aspirin, which is used as an analgesic. Now, predominant reactions or primary amines. So acetylation is the next process, and it involves primary amines and sulfonamides. So before we go into acetylation, we want to quickly go back and review so what we've done so far. So glucuronidation is a major metabolic pathway. It's usually mainly found in liver, but it can also be found, the enzyme responsible is mainly found in the liver and many other tissues, but it's also found in adrenal gland, spleen, thymus, intestine, and kidney, and even said to be found in the brain. The donor is UDPGA, is very highly energetic, abundant, and related to glycogen synthesis. Glucuronidation, UDPGA is right here, it's mentioned here, and you have UDP glucose dehydrogenase. This is the donor molecule, and this part that we're most interested in right here. This is the UDP part, which uridine glucuronic acid that we remove, and we take on board this part here. So remember, can also form enterohepatic recirculation. UGT enzymes can be classified into 3 groups: UGT 1, 2, and 3, but mainly 1 and 2 is mainly present. 2B7 and 1A1 is the main ones, and it's 70%, but there are other ones like 1AB, 1A8, 1A4, 1A6, but mainly what we want to focus on is 1A1 and 1A4. Found to be active in the liver, also been reported in the brain. So in this case, morphine is an example where you form the 3-glucuronide, which is inactive and analgesic, whereas the 6 is active. 1A1 is involved in paracetamol, simvastatin, which is used in cholesterol, Irinotecan, colorectal cancer. So the foundation usually targets alcohols and phenols as well as carboxylic acid. So what happens is you get rid of the ADP under the UGT. So example of this is 2B7 of salicylic acid chloride, and you can form what you form here is known as ether. What you form here is an ester. Keep going. Sulfonamide and glucuronidation, again the same thing. UGT, you replace the H with a glucuronide molecule. So what affects sometimes irinotecan is hydrolyzed via carboxylesterase 1 into the SN38 active form, and then this can then be undergo phase 2 metabolism by UGT1A1 and UDPGA to form SN38, which is inactive. It's a regulatory action in which it controls severe diarrhea, neutropenia. So if you have too much of the active form, you can get these conditions. Cytosolic transferase enzyme, sulfotransferase. So it's mainly PAPs. It's less abundant in the cytosol compared to UGT. This is mainly because glycogen is stored in the liver cells, and that's where most glycogen synthesis take place. So UDPGA is most commonly formed there, and the enzyme that we use here is sulfotransferase. So compared to this key part here is what we're interested in. Now, paracetamol is an example in which it targets mainly sulphation, usually targets phenols, alcohols, and amines, so be aware of that. PAPS sulfotransferase, Now, amino acid conjugation is a much more complex process in which it adds an amino acid to the drug. The drug usually has to have a functional group of carboxylic acid around it. There's no donor molecules, but the enzyme involved here is N-acetyltransferase enzyme, and it occurs in the mitochondria. So first is ATP, it's converted to AMP, then coenzyme A synthetase, and then it forms an thioester intermediate, and then from there we add the amino acid to the remove the S-CoA part, the intermediate part, and then you add the amino acid to the drug. So example of this is benzoic acid. You can see as you go along the CoASH, and then you add the glycine, and then you add the glycine to it. Right. Salicylic acid also can undergo because whatever has a carboxylic acid, so usually here the ATP, then the AMP, then the CoA synthetase takes place, and then from there the thioester intermediate is formed. This is the thioester intermediate, and then from there N-acetyltransferase and glycine is used to form this molecule here. Now, acetylation is the next type of reaction involved with phase 2 metabolism, and it usually involves the enzyme N-acetyltransferase, and it takes place in the cytosol. It usually requires a high energy donor, so acetyl coenzyme A, which you might be aware of from cellular biochemistry of production of glucose. So in the link reaction, that is. So firstly, what you look for is mainly primary amines. So you have the acetyl CoA. This is the high energy donor, and then you got the NAT, the enzyme. And what happens is it removes the carboxylic part, it removes one of the hydrogens, and then it adds the this part here, and the acetal part, and gets rid of the CoA SH. So what you need to be aware of is the byproduct of acetylation is you end up getting a CoA SH at the end, and the acetal is added over here. So yep. Problem with acetylation is often results in decreased water solubility, so no increase in excretion, and it usually, because there's no excretion, there's no clear excretion, this can then lead to some sort of toxicity within the kidney tubules. So sulfanilamide, so again this was used as an antibacterial in World War II. So what you look for is you've got your NH2 here, so you've got your secondary amine, primary amine, so that's lost 1H. Again, you have one more here. So once it undergoes acetylation, it forms the acetal group, comes off, gets there, and then the CoA and the SH is the byproduct, and then from here you can convert the bottom part. Again, the same thing takes place via this direction as well. So isoniazid, so this is used as an antibiotic against tuberculosis. Used as a first-line treatment of tuberculosis, hepatotoxicity occur in 1 to 2% of people. So if you remember back to sulfonation, so this is sulphation, so it was the second process. It makes use of the donor PAPS and sulfotransferase. And the question is, what effect can reduced sulphation have on patients? Alright, so isoniazid again is an antibiotic used to treat tuberculosis. It usually affects the cell membrane. So here you have isoniazid. So sulphation, you can have amine. So your functional oil can be phenols, mainly phenols or alcohols or primary amines. So here you have it. So you've got the N-acyl transferase, and then this form goes on to form N-acyl lyso. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but it forms this molecule here. So slow as acetylators have a poor function of NAT enzymes, increased risk of hepatotoxicity. So if you have a very decreased amount of NAT, so NAT was the sorry, this is not meant to be sulfation. This is my mistake. Reduced acetylation. Right, so if you go back to acetylation, the enzyme we use is N-acyl transferase, and the enzyme that we use this is N-acyl transferase, this is N-acetyl transferase. So notice the difference between amino acid conjugation and acetylations. And in amino acid, you might want to put the name of the amino acid that you're conjugating as well, to make it more apparent to the reader or the learner. So slow acetylators, so someone who has a very reduced number of enzymes, NAT enzymes, means that this isoniazid is usually cannot be converted, and which means they have a high risk of hepatotoxicity. So it stays in the liver, and it can cause very toxic level. It can reach up to very high toxic levels, causing various different severe effects. Now, what happens if it was, so for example, if you look at this diagram here, if it was to be acetylated by NAT, it would go on to form acetyl isonoside, which is this one here, and then it can then be hydrolyzed. But if it's not, what happens is it usually stays like this, and hydrazine is hepatotoxic. It usually ends up forming NH2, which is here. So it gets rid of all of this, then it just forms that bit comes here, which forms hydrazine, which can be quite detrimental to the liver. I hope you understand that. So these PowerPoint slides are from Dr. Dann Carr, so all credit goes to him. He's a lecturer at the Liverpool University of Liverpool. Right, now we're going to carry on with phase 2 metabolism, so the rest of it. So we've so far looked at glucuronidation, sulphation, amino acid conjugation, acetylation, methylation. So now we need to look at the last three. So methylation, from the name itself, you can guess it's the addition of a methyl group. Common drug metabolism pathway, but considered minor compared to the others. Commonly, metabolic functional groups include phenols, catechol, amines, so just keep that in mind. Methylation requires the presence of a cofactor methyl donor, and the donor is known as SAM, S-adenosyl methionine, so we call it SAM. So it's the main point you want to take out from here is catalyzed by that enzyme there, and the donor is known as SAM, or if you want to go about naming it fully out, it's S-adenosyl methionine. Right. So, like we said before, chemically reactive methyl group is present here. So, if you go back. Methyl transferases focus on two examples which catalyze drug metabolism reactions. So we have the main two types of methyl transferases are COMT, so catechol, and thiopurine S-methyl TPMT. So L-DOPA is used in Parkinson's disease treatment. So levodopa is basically another short form of saying L-DOPA. Right, now you can see here that we're interested in the phenol part, so the OH and the OH. There's the donor, SAM, and there's the enzyme, catechol methyl transferase, COMT. And as you can see, what happens here is, what happens here is the OH is replaced by a methyl group right there. So the H is removed and it's added to the nucleophilic O right there, so CH3. Similarly on the bottom as well, same thing can happen. Instead of the top one, the H is removed and the CH3 is added. So two alternative methyl metabolites. So L-DOPA is initially administered in this format, and then once it becomes metabolized via phase 2 via SAM and COMT, it has a methyl group attached to it. TPMT, so where do we use thiopurine S-methyl transferase? So azathioprine is you might have heard it before, is the immunosuppressant. If you watched my previous video, you would have known that this molecule is the immunosuppressant used in when you're having a donor transplant. And non-enzymatic removal of this is xanthine oxidation takes place to form the 6 and the 6-MP version. This is the active version, and the TPMT takes place here. So decreased TPMT activity causes increased circulating levels of 6-MP. So you don't want too much of the 6-MP because that's the active form of the immunosuppressant, leading to bone marrow toxicity, and then you have very high suppressants in your plasma concentration, which means you can develop various different types of infections and various side effects. So it's not a great idea. So another example is TPMT. Like before, how we said the SN38 of the active form this used in colorectal cancer can then be made inactive via UGT1A1. Like that, TPMT can make the 6-mercaptopurine, so the active form of azathioprine, inactive by adding the SH3 part. So SAM again, so if this doesn't take place, this increases, which can lead to toxicity. Now, glutathione conjugation is mainly involved in epoxides and quinonamines, so antimalarials, tripeptide. So you've got the 3 different types of amino acids. Glutathione S transferase, GST, is the enzyme. So cytosolic enzyme, so it's mainly found in the cytosol. No hydrogen donor. It's mainly involved in 15% of all hepatic drug metabolism reactions. So that's quite a fair amount right there. The products are usually excreted in the urine bile and undergo further metabolism to mercapturic acids. So mercapturic acids include so you have paracetamol. So paracetamol can be initially phase 1. Initially, what can happen is it can be oxidized to this form here, NAPQI. So this reaction here is known as this is the first reaction that takes place. Sorry, I just had to drink a bit of water. So this happens in the liver. So this is phase 1, and so this is dehydrogenation basically. So you lose the H. Then what happens is in phase 2 you have the donors, which are the GSH, GST. So if you go back, GST is the enzyme. So you've got the tripeptide G, the amino acid, and the SH. So you're interested in the SH part. So this process is glutathione conjugation. So this is then transferred to here to form this glutathione conjugate by the GST enzyme. It's a bit confusing, but if you get your head around it slowly, you should be able to understand it. Now, before we move right on, we need to go back, and we'll have a quick run back at all of these different types of reactions. So we'll go back to the start here. So methylation, it's addition of a methyl group, mainly phenols, catechols, amines, sulfhydryls. So methyl transferase is the enzyme, and the donor is called SAM. And there's 2 different types, COMT and TPMT. So levodopa is an example of SAM, can then remove the H of the phenol here and add the COMT. So add the methyl here, and similar here. Thiopurine S-methyl transferase is used in the azathioprine, which is an immunosuppressant. The 6-MP is the active form. This is formed from the xanthine oxidation reaction in the cytochrome P450 6-diuric acid. So the thiopyrazine then TPMT usually converts this via the addition of SAM into an inactive form by methylation. So it decreases toxicity. Glutathione conjugation is done by the enzyme GST. So glutathione S transferase. So you're transferring, and the donor that you're using here is a tripeptide, which is formed from 3 amino acids and the SH. So you're mainly involved with the S part here. So that's why you've got the S transferase. The S stands for that bit. And it accounts for 15% of all drug metabolism. Example would be phase 1 dehydrogenation takes place with the paracetamol, and then you can add this in order to form this. Now, we said something about products undergo further metabolism into mercapturic acids. So once you form the glutathione conjugate, this is just halfway of the whole process. So now you have to undergo, this is in the liver, so now we have to undergo a process by which you form mercapturic acid synthesis, and this is sometimes referred to as phase 3. So this is like really out of like the kidney, out of the liver. So initially what happens is this is then transferred to the kidney, in which glutamyl transpeptidase, gamma glutamyl transpeptidase is the enzyme, or you can say it's the transpeptidase is the enzyme. This whole thing is the enzyme, and what happens here is that the glutamine is removed. As you can see, the GLU was present there. That's not there anymore. Peptidase, then this, the GLY is removed, and then and then what happens is NAT N-acetyl transferase takes place, in which an acetyl group is added in order to form the mercapturic acid. So that's the interrogan pathway. So if you want to know how sometimes glutathione conjugate becomes this is what happens. So it goes from the liver to the kidney and then back to the liver. So if you remember, the NAT was involved in the last but not least is the epoxide hydrolysis. So it's done by epoxide hydrolase. Human subtypes include EPHX1 all the way down to 4. So there's various different ones of this that you might need to be aware of. EPHX1 is a microscopic enzyme. It's a key drug metabolism. So P450 usually makes the epoxide there. So imagine this is the benzene, which is not fully shown. Then the epoxy and water goes on to form the dihydrolyl. Carbamazepine is an example of this. So initially what happens is epoxidation takes place by P450, and then from there you can have the epoxide hydrolase 1, which is then added with water to form carbamazepine dihydrolyl. So you want to know that this is what's formed. So a simple way to put all of this will be OH, carboxylic acid, NH2. These are all, OH is involved in glucuronidation, sulphation, methylation. The carboxylic one is mainly involved in amino acid conjugation and glucuronidation. NH2 is involved in sulphation, acetylation, and glucuronidation again. So you see glucuronidation involves both three of these. So what you want to do is just learn these three and then go back, maybe rewind the video and then learn the different types of examples that I gave, which were given to me from our lecture slides. So the drug can undergo multiple metabolic reactions. So fail to follow aspirin, so a common analgesic given to most patients. So this is aspirin. So initially, if you had to have hydrolysis, it would be carboxylesterase enzyme, which hydrolyzes it. You look for the area which contains the ester. So in hydrolysis, you look for an ester or an amide, remember. And in terms of aspirin, I believe the enzyme is carboxylesterase 1, but I might be wrong. Don't exactly quite remember off the top of my head. But you break the bond here in order to form salicylic acid. So if you hydrolyze aspirin, you get salicylic acid, which is another form. Then from salicylic acid, you got glucuronidation can take place because you got phenol right there, an OH. From or you can carry on. You can also glucuronide the carboxylic acid. So that's this bit here. So you form the ester. Oh no, yeah, you form the ester here, but then you form the ether here. You can also have a glycine conjugation, amino acid conjugation take place via NaCl transferase. So you end up getting salicylic acid. From there, you can undergo glucuronation again, in which this is changed to phenolic glucuronide, or you can go hydroxylation from this time to form another OH. Again, salicylic acid can go to gentisic acid by hydroxylation. And yeah, these are various things that can take place. There's an example of the map. Clopidogrel is the metabolism, so it usually takes place via cytochrome P2C19, if you remember, 18 and 19 and 15%. But hydrolysis via carboxylesterase 1 can cause it to become the inactive state, which is SR26334. First it goes into there, and then from there it gets oxidized again to the active mode R13, but the SR2 is the inactive version, so hydrolysis takes place. Sometimes you can't have too much clopidogrel, which is an antiplatelet, or is a antiplatelet drug. So what happens is reduced levels of R13 means the patients are at a greater risk of thrombosis. Yeah. Now, so if we go through the last few slides as well. So toxic effects is epoxides. So they're meant to be here. So Irinotecan, that's used as a colorectal cancer drug. Phase 1 metabolism takes place. So in here you got what you're looking for is the ester group. So it's hydrolysis again. It's done via 1 or 2, but it's mainly 1 carboxylesterase, and it can form the active form SN38. Now, if glucuronidation takes place, it forms the inactive SN38, which is excreted in bile, and this is done by the UTG at 1A1. So it makes a bit of sense now, doesn't it? So what you're looking for is the OH, and then you add it here. So before, look for the ester, the droxyl. So if SN38 is not formed, it can form excessive diarrhea, neutropenia, causing various reduced white blood cell count, can then lead to various infections and deprived immunity. So Toxic effects of drug metabolism. Drug metabolism isn't always the detoxification pathway. Sometimes are often more toxic than present drugs. So phase 2 is usually a detoxification pathway, but some toxic products occur. So, paracetamol, normally one of the safest drugs at high doses above 10 grams in a day. So usually paracetamol is administered at around 250 milligrams, for about 3 days, for 3 times a day. It's been reported that there's about 100 to 200 people in the UK that have suicide, so they overdose themselves with paracetamol, which is extremely painful, and it usually puts very high pressure on your liver. So in paracetamol, if you start here, you can have sulphation. So this is done by the enzyme PAPS and the sulfotransferase here, or you can undergo glucuronidation. This is done by the UGTA1 and the paracetamol, so it's UGTA1 and the UDPGA in order to form the glucuronide. You also have P450. You can dehydrogenation to form NAPQI, and from here you can have what we were looking at previously. Can't just glucuronide. Can't remember off the top of my head. Glutathione conjugation, yes, glutathione S conjugation, and then it can go on to form what we saw as this molecule here before. So yeah, but the protein SH bit here can be liver damage, hepatitis. So this is some sort of an effect to the liver, some sort of death, liver damage, necrosis, various things, So that's basically all of phase 2 metabolism. And I'd just like to say a massive thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be doing much more pharmacology videos, as well as developmental biology, embryology, endocrine, neurophysiology, and many more throughout the year. So thank you for listening.